Rick. How's it going?
Pretty good, Joe. How have you been doing?
All right, pretty good, pretty good. Well, I heard the news recently about something very important that Jim Morrison's grave in Paris, France. It's Paris, I believe, yeah. His bust. There was this bust of his, profile on his
Hmm.
gravestone, all kinds of graffiti and stuff on it, but it disappeared in 1980. I think they also knocked off his nose on the bust,
Oh no,
disappeared in 1988, and it was presumed that we would never see it again. And yet it turned up recently. We wanted
that's
to talk about
amazing.
that. Yeah, I want to talk about it. You want to share your screen, and we'll take a look at that
Yeah,
famous bust that has.
I just happen to have the news story for it right here.
Yeah. Well, it's really important to me that to see that again because I was a big Jim Morrison fan growing up. I feel like I rediscover the Doors, on a fairly regular basis. Every couple of years, I'm like, gotta listen to all the Doors albums, and I always start with the first, the debut album, and then go through all the other ones
Right, yeah.
kind of like in chronological order, and I'll stay on certain parts. But I hear some disrespect on Jim Morrison. Recently I forget where I was reading it on Rolling Stone or something like that, where they were saying like, hey, he was overrated. It was this, that, and the other, and blah blah blah. Or what was it? Jimmy Page, or no, it was Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin was disrespecting the guy, and I thought, yeah, I mean, I just listened to the whole thing, and I thought he was wonderful. But anyway, what are your
What
thoughts?
what 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 did Robert Plant say about it?
Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin had to do a couple of shows with them, and evidently Robert Plant was like, "This guy's out of control.
Oh,
He's abusive. He's crazy. Blah blah blah." And I guess Robert Plant was more like being controlled. Being cool. This Morrison character is kind of. I imagine how he might have been talking.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's kind of crazy. Well, actually, Robert, remember that time you threw chairs out of the hotel, they were renting a hotel room. So I guess
yeah.
maybe you had some of your moments too. So I kind of thought it was like, well, is Zeppelin calling the Doors crazy or Jim Morrison crazy? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Um, uh, about the bus being rediscovered, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, I think it's great. I think it's great. And I mean, the thing's cool looking, it's got graffiti all over it. And, but I'm glad they found it. I'm not sure if is it, is it made of stone or like granite or something?
I don't
Like,
know. As I'm
it's
look,
kind
I'm
of,
look, looks like a
it,
plaster
it,
bust, doesn't it?
it looks pretty solid, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Should I scroll down and check out the details, you
Yeah,
think?
why not? Hit
Uh,
control on your keyboard and with the mouse, roll up with the mouse, it'll kind of zoom in. You do that.
oh, I gotta
Or the details of the
say, a
article.
bust of Jim Morrison made in 1981 by Croatian artist Mladen Mikulin was recovered by French authorities. Let me see. Doesn't say what it's made of. Um, yeah, I think it's great that they found this thing. I have a lot of respect for Jim Morrison as a lyricist and a a vocalist and a performer, and I think he's one of the great rock vocalists of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to try to reinstall this thing by on his grave or
Well, I would assume they put it back out there on his tomb, you know. You know what it says on his tomb, it says his father uh, an interesting detail about Jim Morrison, his father was the admiral on the ship uh, for the United States. His father was like a high-ranking military officer, and his father was the captain or admiral for I think an admiral for a ship in the Gulf of Tonkin. You remember the Gulf of Tonkin incident that started the Vietnam War? And so his dad was directly involved in the incident that actually launched the Vietnam War.
Oh, wow.
That's something I think about a lot. I think about Morrison is that, his father was, one of the key players in the Vietnam War. And Morrison
Hmm.
himself evaded evaded the draft. That's a whole story right there worth talking about. And then, he evaded the draft, and then when he was, I mean, I guess his music was anti-war. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm sure his father wasn't particularly pleased with that. He was on the opposite side of that issue. So I think that makes
Yeah.
it really, really interesting to think about. When he sings the end, Father, I want to kill you. And
Yeah.
people say, well, that's the Oedipus complex because Oedipus wants to, the ancient Greek tale and all that. But it's like there was something, really personal about that, I think, that had to do with the fact that if you had gone with what your dad was saying, you could have been enrolled in a war that he was involved in starting, and you could have been, chewed up in it like in a hamburger grinder because of,
Yeah.
what your and I'm not getting, I know some people who might look at this video might say, "Are you against the Vietnam War? Are you trying to dishonor the memory of the people?" No, I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying that Morrison made his choice. He didn't want to participate in that war. You know,
Hmm.
my father was veteran of Vietnam, so I'm not disrespecting the soldiers that served in Vietnam. I'm just saying this was the path that Morrison chose,
Hmm.
and he did so with his father being a very high-ranking official in the military. So I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It really shows you the the sort of the generation gap that occurred around that time with like the younger generation kind of going in a totally different direction from their parents, and kind of breaking away from from the past. But I would have been with Jim. I mean, um, I think it was totally wrong for our government to draft teenagers and send them over to the other side of the world, and force them to fight in this pointless war. So, um, I respect Jim Morrison for that decision. You know.
Right. Yeah. Well, getting back to I wanted to have a couple of words about the linkage between Led Zeppelin and the Doors, because I was interesting overlap between those two groups. Because I think when it was 1969 was when they first met in Los Angeles at the Whiskey A Go Go.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's where they met. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. But anyway, I think in a sense, the Doors were not. I mean, they weren't on the scene as long as Led Zeppelin was. Led Zeppelin had their debut album, I believe, in 1968, and the Doors got started in 1967. But the Doors were pretty much. I mean, when Morrison died I believe it was September of 1971. That was kind of the end of the Doors. But Zeppelin went on for I think all the way up to 1980 when John Bonham died, the drummer. So, but in a way, I think they represent two, even though they were kind of contemporaneous there at the beginning, I think they kind of represent two different eras of rock because
Yeah.
the Doors are more, to me, I associate the Doors really with the 60s And to me, Zeppelin, they did start in the 60s, but I don't really think of them as being a 60s band. I think of them as being more a 70s band, you know?
Yeah, yeah, same here. Yeah, I think of well, Jim kind of had that crooning vocal style, so in a way he was kind of like a bridge between like older kinds of music, like Frank Sinatra and like the younger generation of rock singers. He had that kind of that just that kind of older way of singing, and then Robert Plant, he was just kind of totally doing his own thing, and kind of
Robert, yeah.
taking things in kind of like a hard rock direction, and but yeah, I think you're right. I think uh, they're a lot different. There's going to be differences between just about any two bands you can think of, really. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
It's just like in hindsight, you're looking, I mean, at the time, if you'd have gone to the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, you might have thought, well, yeah, they're all part of the scene. This is part of the scene. This kind of music that's going on these days. But like I said, looking back on it in retrospect, you can kind of see what a big difference there is in the creative direction, the style, and I think what you mentioned too about Morrison being more of a crooner, in a lot of ways he was kind of preserving that traditional vocal style of delivery. Very,
Hmm.
and I would argue it's a very American style. Another thing I admired about Jim Morrison is that he really didn't lay on the blues and thick, whereas uh, I mean I love Robert Plant. I think he's a great vocalist, but he really laid on the blues really thick. I think he was trying to be really um, authentic,
Yeah,
rather he was
yeah,
with the blues
right.
tradition, and Morrison was more like kind of like more of the crooner tradition, like you said.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I kind of feel like Robert Plant was heavily influenced by Janis Joplin, but I guess that's another discussion, But um, if you compare one of the Led Zeppelin songs like uh, "Since I've Been Loving You," compare that to one of Janis Joplin's live performances, and you'll definitely hear some similarities there in the.
I never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I heard a live song by Janis Joplin, or I don't know if it might have been Big Brother and the Holding Company, but it was a song I'd never heard before, and I was like, man, that sounds a lot like what she's doing. Sounds a lot like Robert Plant, and it kind of. But I think Janis Joplin,
She's the one who
she was
pioneered it.
yeah, she was doing her thing before Led Zeppelin, so
That's right. That's right.
I think I know. I'm pretty sure she had at least a little bit of influence on Robert Plant's singing.
Yeah,
Maybe a
I've
lot
been
of influence.
watching this wonderful American singer, Janis Joplin, just wonderful, and I think I might try some of that myself when I'm up on stage. See how it goes.
think I'll,
I
think I'll try a bit of that.
think I'll try a bit of that. It's rather appealing. Yeah. So anyway, shall we wrap it up?
Sure.
Okay, all right. So that was discussion on Jim Morrison's bust and where that took us. All right. Talk to you later.